You know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by. You know how I feel. It's a new dawn. It's a new day. It's a new life for me. Yeah.
What is going on, Hive? Today is Tuesday, June 24th, 2025. And tonight, we are going to flip the script. The mainstream media painted a monster. But what if that is not the man behind the headlines? And as we have suspected for quite some time, this case may have been built on narrative and not so much evidence. I got Phoenix Talks and Will backstage. I'm going to bring them up in a couple minutes. And before I do, I just want to say thank you to Will. I will thank him again when he gets up here for being willing to come onto this stream to talk about his thoughts, being one of the few, if not the only current person who's speaking out from directly knowing Bryan about how he just doesn't feel Bryan would have done this based on personal experience. So I am excited to ask him a handful of questions and hear his thoughts. We will go into whatever amount of detail he's comfortable with. I told him he can say whatever the hell he wants. And I am, again, looking forward to having him and Phoenix up here. But first, I will say what's up to the Hive. I see Sherry and April, Chantelli Lace with the RBF. We got another Sherry, Leslie and Billy, Brooke. We got Dina, Eileen, Festive. Shout out to the best mod. Ricky, Crystal, D Smalls. The 509 fam is ready. Savannah, Hood Fairy, good to see you here. One of the TikTok Hive OGs. What's going on, Heather? Where's everyone tuning in from tonight? Let's see. River Bear from Albuquerque. We got North Carolina fam. Let's see. We got Florida, the UK, Wyoming, Kansas City, Maine, Illinois, Iowa, Central Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. Mrs. Birdie says your kitchen. Lovely. Waco, Salt Lake, Kirkland, another Wisconsin. Shout out to my fellow cheeseheads. The Netherlands, I just saw. Pittsburgh, Alabama, War Eagle. Louisiana. Another UK, folks. Rainy night in Georgia. Nashville, Canada. Florida, Oklahoma, South Carolina. Philly, Ohio. Ruby is tuning in from the moon. So, again, that's one of my favorite parts of starting each stream is just seeing where everybody is tuning into from. And the Hive stretches far and wide. And if Phoenix and Will are ready backstage, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to bring them up. Phoenix, Will, how are you guys doing tonight?
Good. How are you?
Good. And also, I'll tell the Hive too, with Phoenix and I's audio and then Will's audio. Will's has about a 1 second delay. We tried to figure out if it was because whenever Phoenix and I are talking, but it'll come clear. So we're aware of it if you guys hear it, but you guys will be able to hear him just fine. And so, Will, I appreciate you being here tonight, man. And I know Phoenix does too. The Hive is excited to hear your point of view. And since I've showed your video of you standing up for Bryan, a lot of people have been looking forward to the stream. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. My videos that got deleted.
Yeah. So that's probably that's kind of a good, maybe a little bit of an intro for this stream. So that's what obviously led to you being here. And you had gone on, you were talking about other creators, people who you thought did a good job, people who you thought did a not so good job based on how you knew Bryan. What compelled you to post that?
Well, Brian's he's not able to speak for himself, stick up for himself, these people. And people that don't even know him are pretty much painting a picture of someone that's not who he is.
Yeah.
Totally opposite.
Yeah.
And and I got tired of just only commenting on their videos like Tony Bruschi. And whenever I talk about these people, if I kind of rant or something, because sometimes I don't have a filter, they're just my opinions and they don't affect the opinions of the person. I'm just a guest. It's not the host's opinion, so don't delete his videos because of me.
Yeah, thank you. I put a disclaimer tonight at the bottom. Just saying.
People like Tony Bruschi or the fucking drunk parrot guy or whatever, and Gray Hughes. There's a couple of them. Court TV is just a fucking disaster. I really hope John DePietro doesn't stick his fucking nose in this because I really can't stand that guy. He looks like a thumb with teeth. Fucking guy.
Well,
we'll try to keep it a little PG, but if it gets a little rated R in here, we're just gonna talk to our chat real quick. Yeah. They know us. Okay, we're gonna do.
It's okay. You can tell me. Just tell me if I go a little overboard.
No, you're good, and I kind of get where it comes from. I feel your frustration because we've always had the premise innocent until proven guilty, and a lot of this stuff looks like he may not be guilty.
Yep.
There's just, it's not only knowing him and knowing his personalities. It's like I said, it's more than just not plausible. It's not possible.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about him? How do you know him?
We ran with the same group of people for a while.
Yeah.
At that kind of period in my life that I was involved in, that I was doing.
And what did you learn? What did you learn about him specifically? Like his demeanor? Is he a kind person?
He's very quiet, very intelligent, very reserved. They're kind of a bit of a pushover. I'm not trying to be rude when I say that, but it's, easily, I don't want to say easily manipulated, but
so
not
when you
non-confrontational, unconfrontational. He's very non-confrontational.
And when you say pushover, does he usually tend to follow the crowd instead of be a leader?
Not so much. Well, he only involves the crowd in himself in the crowd if he has to, really. It's usually kind of keeps to himself. But certain things that, like I said, that I was involved in at one time, it didn't really have a choice.
Hey, Will, can you also, one of the things that when we were chatting prior to the stream, you wanted to clarify too, is that like you weren't his childhood friend. You met him.
No.
Yeah.
No, someone had put that on their thing, their thumbnail for the click title, that I was childhood friend. That is incorrect. I never knew him when he was a child.
What age would you say he was when you guys met?
Early 20s, mid 20s.
Early 20s. Yeah. This is kind of random too. One of the things that everybody noticed when we played your videos too was the trophies in your background, and you had told us what they were from when we were backstage. I don't know if you want to share a little bit about that, because people were curious. Like they were like, "Well, clearly this guy's well accomplished." You had talked about your service, so obviously feel free to share.
I raced motocross from the time I was 7 years old until I was 18, and I was pretty accomplished in it. Yeah, I was pretty accomplished in it. Enough that I started out riding Kawasaki's. A KX60 is what I raced whenever I was like 7 years old. I moved up to 80s and 100s, and I ran Kawasaki then. This went from like 94 when I started. And then in 1999, I got an amateur contract from Williamson Honda through Honda HRC. And I switched brands because then they gave me 2 bikes a year for free when I was still an 80 rider. And that went on for 99 and 2000. Then for 2001 through 2003, I was on 125 and 250s, which they gave me those for free too. And Tom Morgan out in California, who did all Team Honda riders, even the pro riders engines. He did the engines for those bikes. Like The only ones that are down here really, like there's some plaques, but all the trophies they're only first place ones, like major ones that were state championships and
Wow.
whatnot. There's a bunch in my pit now. There's a bunch more up in my parents' attic, and for my last 2 years, I didn't even collect my trophy after I won. And I raced every weekend, 11 months out of the year. I didn't even get the trophy afterwards because my dad told me I had too many at home, and the paycheck was all that really mattered. That's what he said, so I didn't collect.
That's crazy. What was your biggest win off the top of your head that you can remember?
There was a lot of important ones. Every state championship was important. There is one trophy down here that's actually not a first. It's maybe this one here.
Would you look at all those trophies?
This is actually a third from in Kawasaki Race of Champions in 1998. In Englishtown, New Jersey. Some people, if they know motocross, they might know who James Stewart was. Gavin Grace. I was still in Kawasaki at the time. Gavin Graysick won. James Stewart got second, and I got third. And we were all Team Green Kawasaki riders on 80s at the time. But it was just kind of a, I got third to like the best two guys in the world at the time.
Wow.
James Stewart was extremely fast.
Do you ride recreationally anymore or no?
No, I don't at all. I mean, I fought a couple times. Like I started to miss it lately, and I kind of was thinking about maybe getting a bike. But then again, it's like I'm not, if I crash, I don't think I'd bounce right up again. So,
yeah,
you take all that into consideration.
So, Will, after you're
in good shape and physically, I'm in good shape, and I've been 6 foot, 165 pounds since I've been 17. So,
yeah, you're pretty lean. You're pretty lean and cut.
You don't see many fat dirt bike riders, I don't think.
After that, and I quit, like I said, when I was 18, and I dropped my sponsors in my contract because, I got started to resent it because it wasn't fun anymore. My father it got too serious. When we started, it was only supposed to be about fun, and it just got to the point that it wasn't fun anymore, and we were in an argument over it. I was 18, and a Marine recruiter happened to knock on the door, and I said, "Get me the fuck out of here!" And of course, that guy was only too happy to hear that.
So, did you go to Paris Island in South Carolina?
Yes.
Cool.
Yep.
Yeah. Like I said, thank you for your service. By the way, Will is it was a Marine. How long did you stay in for, Will?
4 years.
So you did your 4, got out. What'd you do after?
Construction. I came home and I was home. I had 1 day. I came home for 1 day. I could have collected unemployment for like a year, but I had 1 day off, and I went fishing, and the very next day I was working.
I hear the work ethic. So tell me, let's back it up a little bit. Let's talk about your military service. I told you a little bit about my history and my family's history, and I'm curious because my dad was a Marine and he was a sniper in Vietnam. Tell me a little bit about your service.
I was just a regular rifleman.
And did you go into combat? Where did you go after Paris?
School of Infantry. Well, actually, I came home for 10 days and they were backed up. So after that 10 days at the time, I had to do like 2 weeks or a month or something for recruiting duty because they were so backed up with School of Infantry at the time. And then after that was over. So I actually got quite a bit of time at home after boot camp, which was 13 weeks. And I then went to would have been Camp Geiger, which is right there at Lejeune, Jacksonville, North Carolina. Mm-hmm. And I went there for School of Infantry. And then
where'd you go after?
Camp Lejeune.
So you stayed your 4 years there, got out, went into construction in your early, maybe 25s, and you run into Kohberger.
I was 18. So when I come home, when I took terminal from Levi, I had saved up. I was 22 at the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
So was the military your thing or not?
I actually did very well in there. I have like OCD issues, and I'm very clean and neat about everything. All I ever did was do what I was told, and you'd be surprised how many people can't do that, which I didn't quite understand. And I had gotten awards. I got a special award in school infantry, this gung ho award thing, which I didn't know was important at the time. But everywhere that I went, or every like sergeant major or high-ranking enlisted person that would come in and do like a barracks inspection on Camp Lejeune when I was there would kind of make quite a big deal about it. And I was also meritoriously promoted when I was in 10 months before I was actually eligible to time and grade for corporal, and before I even had points to do it. They thought I was good enough to.
Yeah, you can tell you've got great discipline. Look at all these awards behind you, right? That requires serious discipline, just like the military. Yeah, hey, you know what?
It's kind of like
In order to get those awards, you got to show up. You got to perform. That's like the military. You got to show up. You got to perform.
Well,
Right?
there were times I didn't perform.
Yeah, right.
There were times that things just didn't work out, or there were times that I felt like I performed, but I was told afterwards, even though I got like second or third, I was told that I didn't perform up to what I should have, but I felt like I did.
So then you get out. Let's move forward to you meet Bryan. Like you said, you guys used to run in the same crowds. And do you remember the first time seeing Bryan like walk through the door, or like what was your initial reaction of him? Because we've talked about, like, I've said when he was on the news the first time, I kind of was like,
I'm busy right now. Oh. Okay, go ahead. My initial thoughts.
Yeah, just like, because we've said when we saw Bryan's picture on the news, a lot of us, it was either one or the other, like, oh yeah, I could see him doing that. But a lot of people were like, that's the guy, like he did that to 4 people. And, I don't know if you want to kind of also loop in like the military training and just the sheer violence that it would take after, your training to do that with a fixed blade.
Well, when I first met him, we'll start with that. I didn't really, I don't know, he didn't really say much. I just kind of, I don't really look at all men as like, I don't like start studying them as a threat, but I knew he wasn't one.
You knew he wasn't a threat.
Men are like fucking wolves for the most part, without even talking. We know where we rank. You know that. You're a man. You know what I mean. If you're in a room with other men, even if you don't speak to them, you know where their fucking place is on the totem pole. They know where yours is. It's kind of like that. You understand what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So
yeah,
is that sure like you walk into a room and you know who the alpha male is?
Yeah, basically.
Is that
most people
kind of okay? Yeah, I mean, as a woman, I walk into
that.
a room and I know who's the alpha male, right? Male, and I'm looking at the guy that's smiling in the $3,000 suit, and I'm like, So I mean, my initial reaction when they released, and I'm a big proponent of, there's so much bad press. Media has got their hands all into this. They're all for a money grab. But when I look at him and I see him, I'm like, that guy did this to all these people in this amount of time. This doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't compute. And
when I saw him, and not to be disrespectful towards him or anything, or I don't want anyone to take it the wrong way, but I laughed out loud when I saw, because I was like, there ain't a fucking way he did this.
Oh, when you saw it on news?
No way he did this. It just didn't happen. And, I'm very familiar with KBAR Knives. I'm very familiar with knives in general, as I make my own for throwing. I make professional grade throwing knives here in my shop. Wow. But like, here's a KBAR. This is a Scapegoat. This would be the same dimensions of the USMC KBAR. The only difference is it doesn't have a stacked leather handle. It's kind of a rubber silver thing. And the traction coating on this is gray rather than black. But the dimensions are the same. The sheath on this is different. It's a Kydex, where the USMC version is just a regular leather sheath. But in order for someone to even be able to go in there and do that, even someone like myself that, you know, that has been trained and has been in situations, you know, where you're fighting, even someone like me wouldn't be able to go in there and do something like that by myself with something like this without catching a black eye, having my DNA everywhere, theirs all over me, my car, my apartment. It's impossible for that to happen. And you're talking about someone who's not trained in this at all, you know, especially someone like, I don't think he's ever, I know he never hunted or anything like that. He wasn't a hunter. I don't think he ever, like me, when I was a kid, I got in fist fights and stuff. He
So
never had. He never did. I know he did.
So how
So-
often? Oh, go ahead, Bertie.
oh, I was probably gonna ask something similar to you. Like, so like when you guys would hang out, like how often did you converse with him? Like I know you had told me like you knew that he was gonna transfer.
I did. I would do most. I would talk to him, but he would talk, but he wouldn't say much. He was his replies to everyone are usually under 5 fucking words. You know, it's kind of was just there for the ride, there for the hookup.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you get to know someone after a while, and you know you can pick up on people's energy when you're right next to them.
So what was the longest period of time that you actually talked to him on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis? I mean,
About twice a week.
twice a week. Okay. So you kind of fairly knew him over a long period of time.
Over a couple of years,
Okay.
4 or 5 years, and I know
Wow.
part of the reason he went out there, I believe, was to get away from the area because of temptation. I had a lot to do with it because I know he, you know, he cleaned himself up, which I cleaned myself up, and and I was, and I kind of thought like if maybe a lot of this happened, like maybe they got his name out of the phone because maybe he, I don't know, maybe he started like doing stuff again. I thought, which it, you know, if he did, then so what? That still doesn't mean he did the crime, and doesn't mean he deserves to get put in the firing squad.
So you just basically, and I don't want to put words in your mouth verbatim. So you hung out with a crowd. You think he left there because that crowd, that lure to get back in that crowd. You said he cleaned himself up. We've heard that in the media before.
Yeah, I
Um,
think that's why. I think it had a lot to do with why he went the whole way out there.
and do you think that once he got out there, did you still stay in touch with him, talk to him on social
No,
media, phone, text?
no, and the reason that is because whenever, like me, I clean my life up. Whenever you do that, you don't really keep in contact with those people anymore. And sometimes to even contact those people or have them call you, it can get a little weird. You know, like me, I know at first I
Yeah.
would get like real defensive to people that would get a hold of me. And I even had them like show up before. You know, I'd be like, look, you can't fucking come here like that. No.
Oh, well, we really appreciate your honesty because that's comes from a really deep place. Do you think maybe when he relocated, he kind of fell back into that kind of crowd, a new crowd?
He may have. I don't know. I know that like he was into hiking and stuff, and like we had talked the other night about the meteorology thing about him being out there at night because that was the kind of stuff he would do. He was into. Um, it's
And I
really hard to say, but I know they linked him somehow. I just know there's no way he did the crime, but they linked him somehow to it. And I think there's a good chance that that's how they linked him. Had to do with maybe he was buying from that house because I understand there was a lot of drugs being sold there. That's what I've heard. I can't say that I know that for a fact because I was
yeah, you
never
can
there.
speculate. We can all
But
speculate. We kind of heard
I
the
don't want to
rumors.
speculate to the point of like I mean a guilter does, you know. Say,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know, I don't want to speculate to that degree. Everyone deserves the benefit of the doubt, and really, if you don't know someone personally or you never met them, I don't really see the right these people have to even make up their speculations or assumptions.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like that's not right.
Hey, Will, did So you had said Bryan had talked about, like, he told you he was transferring. Did he ever tell you about like what he was studying at DeSales? Like, did he talk about criminology? Did he talk about, kind of, he was going to go pursue a PhD? Did he ever mention that whole internship that his professor recommended him for?
Well, I didn't know about that.
Okay.
I did know that I didn't know he was going for his doctor's degree or his PhD. I didn't know that. But I knew he was in college at one time and studying criminal justice, whether it was forensics or what. That's all I knew. That's all we
Okay.
talked about. And that was only because I asked, and then I kind of was just trying to make conversation. I sometimes ask questions like that, and I kind of just zone out when someone's starting to answer me because I'm just trying to make conversation.
Yeah. So in like that circle of friends, I totally understand and can see why, if you get out of that group of friends that maybe you weren't making the best choices with, you don't want to go around them. You don't want to get lured back into it. Totally agree. Have you, because you're out in Pennsylvania, or at least that's where you guys knew each other. So like in and closer to Pennsylvania, have other people that knew him growing up, or like, has there been anybody maybe on a more local level in Pennsylvania kind of speak up like you have?
No, not that I know of. And I know that the defense had reached out to some people that were friends with them. And I guess they refused to talk and I think a lot of that had to do with how much the media has got involved in all this. And you got this is the first time I can ever remember a trial where someone that was going to trial and having a book written about them being fucking guilty already before the trial even started.
Yeah.
By Howard Bloom, and I think that might have a lot to do with it, that kind of stuff. And people just they don't want their name brought up. They don't want to be drugged through the fucking gutter with Bryan, even though that I kind of feel like they should speak up. I don't know. I just feel bad about the whole thing for him because I'm sure he doesn't like jail at all. I'm sure he's probably pretty fucking grossed out by the conditions and how he has to live in there. Which I'm sure, knowing him, he's probably in like the RHU, has a cell, is red coding because he wants to sell to himself, away from everyone. Probably guessing that's the way it is for him. And then you think of his family, and how they went there and they drove his parents out of the house at like 12 o'clock at night. Zip tied cuffed him. It's fucking ridiculous.
And you said that, what was the phrase you used to kind of describe his family? It was like a very like just normal Pennsylvania family.
Yeah, they're quiet like he is. They're just, and if you see his dad looks like, they're like Mr. Rogers.
Yeah.
That's what, it's like, that's what it reminds me of. Hey, they're good people.
Yeah.
I can't say anything bad about him or his family.
Well, I think we kind of feel the same way. We've been up here advocating for innocence until proven guilty, and looking at the evidence and looking at the documents and getting a kind of feel how other people are seeing this play out. And, sometimes I'm like dumbfounded. How could somebody do something like this? Do you have any ideas that you've gathered from yourself about who could have done this?
It's definitely more than one person. I stand by it. I truly believe that. Because like I said, even me alone, by myself, I couldn't go in there and do that like that without, like I said, suffering a black eye and my DNA everywhere and hairs all over me. And people don't realize, when you get in a fight, if all these people, it's not like the movies, and even getting in a confrontation that's physical takes a lot of cardio to do so, let alone with 4 people. And that one kid was fucking huge.
I think he was like 6'3", 6'4", something like that.
Yeah, that kid was no joke, and I'm sure like if he got a hold of you, even if he got a hold of me, even if I know how to fight or whatever, I'm sure I'd know about it. I'm sure I'd feel it.
Yeah, he looked pretty solid.
And I guess his girlfriend was kind of a fighter too, which some girls are. I have a sister that's like the female version of me, 6 foot, 165 pounds, and she can fucking fight.
you had said also, like, you wouldn't be surprised, like, if someone fought back against Bryan, like they could get him to stop. Like you were saying, like if one of those girls like could probably
No, one of
fend
those
him
girls
off.
by themselves. Yeah. If I mean to put it in perspective of how, and I'm not trying to paint him as some kind of a pussy or something, but he's not like me. All right. One of those girls would have took that knife from him and beat his ass by themselves. It wouldn't have happened. He wouldn't have gone in there and done that to begin with. And the whole thing with like the DoorDash driver and stuff, I really feel like people are being pretty sure that girl might be like a snitch for the cops. And we all know the oldest trick in the book is with these cops is when people want out of jail or whatever, they're looking to make a deal, they'll get motherfuckers to lie up on that stand and concoct your story to get someone that they're trying to have a big case against found guilty. Just like they did to Zach and Nate Adams down in Tennessee, those TBA agents did. You know, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then that guy came out that they did that to. He wanted out of jail. They got him to go up and make up a story. And then 9 years later, he just couldn't take it anymore. He felt so fucking awful about it that he came out. So now those boys are going to get a new trial over that.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting, Will, kind of how you were saying how you described him kind of as a pushover. Again, not trying to paint him in a bad light, but just kind of quiet and whatever. I mean, that would be somebody who, as far as being painted as a scapegoat, might have a hard time mentally, on top of maybe some other challenges as well, to stand up for yourself with. I think it'd be hard for anybody who's maybe even confrontational or not, to stand up for themselves with the entire media machine painting you as this monster. And I was gonna follow up with that by saying, like, did you ever see any, aggression or just any hint of like a trigger moment, anything?
Never.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, it seemed like somebody who would do this had to have been trained in using this specific type of weapon. Comfortable.
Well, that I also think it might have been might have been someone that they knew very well too, because I guess the one girl, and I feel, I do feel bad for that girl. I don't feel bad so much for her parents, because I kind of feel like they are acting more suspicious than anyone, and I don't really trust them that much. And I know that's probably gonna upset people out there, but that's just kind of the way I see it. But I do feel sorry for that girl. None of those kids deserve that. But I guess she had been like beaten to a point that she was unrecognizable, I heard. And going in there and doing something like that with a knife and then like beating someone like that, like there was some hatred involved there that was built up over a period of time, I'm going to say. That wasn't over someone that was a stalker, which we know from the evidence, and we know from court hearings that he did no stalking of those fucking girls.
Right.
Even though some people keep pushing that, whenever it literally came out in court with Detective Payne, that no, they have no proof that he did that he stalked anyone, and there wasn't any signs of any kind of sexual, any kind of sexual crime that went on. It doesn't add up.
Had you ever seen Bryan be aggressive?
No, I haven't.
I mean,
he's pretty mono. You know what I mean? You know the term monotone? Like I had a physics teacher in 11th grade who was monotone. He was struggling. I couldn't fucking stand his class. That's how Bryan is. He's one of those people that are. It's just that same tone all the time.
Yeah, and I just want to. I see a lot of comments in the chat of people saying like, how does he know him, or things like that. And so we clarified, if you're just joining the live, Will and Bryan were not childhood friends. They met probably mid to young 20s, in that range. They ran in the same groups. They ran in the same group. Again, I'm not, going to make Will go into any details that he feels, uncomfortable sharing. He can say whatever he wants, but if you've been tuned in, and if you've ever been an addict or had to get clean, to not hang out with that group after you get clean seems to be a fairly common theme, and probably very encouraged to do so. And so for the people asking, that was how they met. If you're just joining in Phoenix, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off if you're going to ask something.
Oh, no, I was just gonna, I mean, people are asking in the chat. I'm trying to go back and forth and read the chat and look at a few things and kind of assess the situation. And, you know, they're asking questions that we got to use our logic, guys. I'm not going to ask Will if he knew Kopaka. Will was a Marine in South
I don't know.
Carolina. Yeah,
Yeah,
Will was a Marine in South Carolina. Kopaka was in the Army. They probably have never met. So, I mean, we have to use logic here. So, and I'm not here to waste
I
Will's
appreciate the
time.
question regardless, and I understand. I don't want to say there's no such thing as like a bad question. I mean, I appreciate you asking, but no, I can't see the question. I tried signing into the YouTube and it wouldn't connect.
Well, this is the same logic that I teach when looking at court documents and individuals and backgrounds and information. You have to be able to put those pieces together because, I don't want to waste anyone's time. But at the same time, people do have questions that they need help with. Will, I want to ask this one question, though. And I think it's really important for our viewers and you, since your videos were taken down. There was something that you said in your video that had me go, wow. Not only are you the only person this entire 2.5, 3 years that have stood up for Bryan, how do you feel about them, talking about his disabilities?
Well, the thing about, I don't understand where the autism thing came from, because what I feel is autism, or what I know of what autism is, unless there's a very type of mild autism out there that isn't really recognizable, I don't understand that. Why that has come out like that. I don't get that. I don't want to use any derogatory words towards like someone's mental health or anything, what someone suffers from it.
Well, I do have a young teen, 17, with autism. He was diagnosed at 5. And some of the things that you have given me, like, I'm no expert here, only my own experience. Some of the things that you've said about Kohberger make sense to me in the experience I've had with my own son. Because
to me, the things would be more along the lines of diagnosing someone with Asperger's rather than autism.
Right.
Which is the seclusion, attention to detail to everything, quiet, OCD issues, and then like kind of sticking yourself, or maybe being one of those people that sometimes you can start doing something and you won't stop unless someone stops you. If you're focused on doing a task, that would be it. Which to me, that falls under Asperger's, not really autism.
Well,
I don't know.
It's the whole umbrella in the DSM-5.
Yeah, I don't really, like I said, I'm not a medical professional.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I'm only speaking from my own experience.
To get to the point, I never noticed anything that was
okay.
That would have stood out. That stood out as a mental disorder.
Well, this is what worries me, is a lot of people don't know, they don't have that experience. And yet someone like Bryan could be sitting there, even, allegedly framed or the scapegoat, and not even know the difference.
He knows what's going on. I'm sure the kid's very bright. All right. I mean, and people have said, well, if I was him, I'd be speaking up about it. And the fact that he hasn't said anything says everything. Well, he's not the type to say anything. And he's also smart enough to realize that if you're going to start freaking out and shouting, that they're going to use every word you say against you. And they will take every word that you say that you're declaring innocence, and they will twist that around and use it right against you at trial. He knows this. He's not going to say anything until the time comes. I don't look for him to take the stand either. I don't really look for that. Which he'd be smart really not to, because I really don't trust. I think Ashley Jennings and Santa Claus, Bill Thompson. You know, that to me, they're about as good a people as fucking Hank Brennan.
Did you?
Yeah, we just saw what happened to that, you know.
Yeah, isn't he a disgusting human? That fucking guy.
I think it's crazy that Thompson got a murder conviction without a body.
Well, that's the thing, and you know, with the touch DNA ordeal that everyone keeps making a big deal about, and I guarantee everyone watching this right now has their touch DNA on an object in a house somewhere that they were never in before. That's how touch DNA works. In fact, many countries, they're not allowed to convict people with touch DNA for specific reasons of, you know, it's so easy to have your DNA anywhere and you not even know it. And it also makes it easy for law enforcement to manipulate that with the IgG and to kind of convict innocent people who never really did anything.
Yeah. Dude, I don't know if I told you this on the phone, but for people in the chat, just to also take that a step further, I've said this story a handful of times. I had a trial lawyer, Will, her name's Allie Benevento, come on as a guest, and she talked about how she hates the word touch DNA and it should be referred to as trace DNA, because to your point right there, when a juror hears touch DNA, they think, oh, they touched it. Oh, that's in the house. Dude, she told a story about how there was a homeless gentleman with a drinking problem who was passed out outside, and an EMT worker came and put that like pulse ox on his finger. And then like 50 miles away, there was a IT businessman who was found dead that EMT worker got called to the scene on. Never cleaned the pulse ox and used it on the IT guy. The homeless guy from 2 hours before got convicted of murder. That's how sensitive trace DNA can be. It's insane.
Well, I know that even the prosecution's one expert in that one hearing came out and said that they couldn't really link the DNA to Bryan Kohberger. They could only tell that it was male because it was so corrupted. And then it comes out that they didn't even want to use it. The prosecution didn't even want this trace DNA ordeal being used in the trial. And I guess Hitler's forcing them to use it. They had to come to an agreement, both sides, of how they were going to introduce it. And the reason I think he did that, because if he would have thrown it out, that goes right back to the PCA of saying, well, you had no right to even fucking pick them up to begin with. And I think that's why Hitler did that. And I'm not 100% sure about him. I don't like how he kind of sits there like he's just annoyed. He can't do that when the trial goes on. If there's a jury in there, he can't do that. You know. Yeah. You can't show. You got to keep bearing the same bearing for both sides whenever you're being a judge. You can't. Well, unless you're in Canton, Massachusetts, of course, and your name's Beth Canoni. Apparently you can, but anywhere else.
Well, I did see the defense filed a motion in 2023-ish. An expert in the field of this type of DNA for the defense did file an affidavit in the court record in the repository on the case summary. And this guy is like the number one in the top DNA experts in regards to, he's also an attorney and he's had several trials, and they did a third-party expert analysis. So obviously that is sealed like most things in this case, but I cannot wait to hear from that expert in this trial.
And in general, just the suppression of the FBI's lack of conclusive DNA and it being a match. Like, the FBI did not say it was Kohberger's DNA. They only said he was one of several possible sources. The narrative obviously implied it was a complete match. It's a misleading assumption of forensic certainty. And we went into a bunch of things last night from when Detective Payne was being questioned by Ann Taylor. And we went through like just 10 of the top lies, omissions, and the working document in the PCA. Will, if like you had to, I'm going to kind of put you on the spot. Like, if you had to say, like, you had 5 minutes to talk to the jury, like, what is it that you would tell them about Bryan as far as his abilities, your interactions with him? Like, what's like one thing you think a juror could hear and it'd be like, okay, that seems like he's been painted in the wrong light?
I don't know, because I don't really know. I can only tell you, but I can't make someone believe, and I can't make someone understand that someone that's not capable of doing this mentally or physically. It's just not going to happen. It's not. And not only that, like I said, with the knife, of being the type of person to be able to go in there and do that, which, like I said, one person by themselves didn't do that. You got to go back and use a little bit of common sense and think about that. If you're going to think about, you know, who did this crime, you're going to have to go and think, well, did one person actually go and do this? You know, even one person that's skilled was able to go in there and kill 4 people in that manner, that many times, that many slash marks, and make it look like the fucking Manson family in there.
Well, and that's something that people also have to remember, that if Dylan and Bethany were there, that's 6v1 for your first time ever committing an unaliving. Apparently, sorry, I think I'm back on TikTok. Committing a murder.
That's the thing about cardio, like getting in like an altercation, and on top of you being kind of frightened that you might get caught, on top of the adrenaline, that cardio really starts to get less time. You know, the amount of time that you have to be able to do this physically is on a lower.
Well, and also, like, sorry, go ahead.
Your heart rate, the amount of oxygen in your blood that's going to your brain.
The other thing too is,
like, to be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I agree. Like, the adrenaline, the adrenal fatigue, the cardio. I mean, also, who's to say that one of those girls or Ethan isn't armed, right? Like, you know, it's Idaho.
And who's to say that sheath is alleged sheath, which anyone that's if you're going to go in, if it was me and going in there, and the sheath doesn't have an actual button on the strap, it's like this, it's sewed together. This one's actually riveted, but the Marine model that's leather, it's sewed, so it can't be tore off a belt. It can't. Right. And if it would have been me going in there to do that, if I was even going to do that, I wouldn't have taken a sheath with me anyways to begin with. I would have just taken a knife. But I would have took like a fucking machete or something. It's me. Not that I would ever do anything like this.
Of course, right.
And getting into an altercation like that, you would have some type of physical wounds. And I think the reason that they were stopping him along the way, on the way to Pennsylvania, was to see if he had any marks or scratches on him, if he had any bruises on his hands. I don't think he was following too closely. I think it was to get an assessment.
That very may be why they pulled him over. I guess they pulled him over like twice, 2 different times.
Yeah, following too close on the way back to Pennsylvania with his
pops. And the rumor going around there, I saw like a rumor going around that people said, well, his sister suspected him that he did it before he. I don't believe that at all.
Apparently his dad suspected him too in the car ride back, according to Dateline. Like,
yeah.
There's not. I know that his family really cares about him a lot. They love him, and I know they want to be there for this because they support him. People make up a lot of shit, and they're like the girl up here or the woman up here that they found dead. I can't remember her name. We found dead in the bushes there a couple years ago.
The missing woman in Pennsylvania.
Oh yeah, Smithers.
Yeah, Dana Smithers. Yeah, I think it was unrelated.
JLR. I saw had this thing where he was trying to tie Bryan to this as his first victim. That woman's family knows that Bryan didn't have nothing to do with that. That's bullshit. It's just more bullshit. It upsets me when I would see that stuff. And I really didn't want to come out and say like anything at all, really, but kind of felt like I had to do something, stand up for him, because he ain't out here to do it himself.
Phoenix, you were saying too prior to the stream, and I'd seen this, but Will, I don't know if you're aware, apparently some like massive Facebook groups and a lot of internet presence of chat rooms or threads or message boards about Bryan have all been wiped clear, like Facebook groups with over 100,000 people in it. We were kind of wondering before, like, I wonder why that would be and who would have the power to get that taken down. Would it be Bryan's defense? Would it be the state? I mean, Phoenix, do you know why that, or anybody in the Hive?
Were these support groups or were these like guilter groups?
They were just in talking about the case and the unalivings, but the majority, 80% of them, was based on what the media is saying. So of course there's some negativity in there, and the people that were, and I watched a lot of this. I wasn't participating in it. I just kind of looked here and there, and I went last night to go look, and it was gone. It over 100,000 paid participants, members. And I thought that was just odd at the time that everything is coming out right now. And obviously there was 2 more subpoenas that were served yesterday. And I don't know where they got that information, because there's nothing in the repository. It's all the media. I don't even know where they got that information. So it makes me think one of them is Kohberger's ex jail Department of Corrections jailer. And then the other one looks like he's a pastor or something. So from a church. And I'm thinking to myself, how did the media get this information if it's not even in the repository yet?
Well, isn't it kind of interesting? Like, again, Hive, understand what I'm trying to say, but anytime information gets scrubbed offline, right, you usually will see it with, like, not, this is obviously a huge event, but most times you'll see it, like you saw it with COVID, you saw it with Epstein, you saw it with Vegas, you saw it with a lot of other stuff. It just does. It does seem like the coordinated information control, when it's all of them at once, it doesn't, to me, that seems like there might be pressure from a court onto the actual social media site.
Well, I mean, that makes sense. They have the ability to go to Meta and say, Meta, take this down. They have the ability to go to TikTok and scrub all. I've seen this before myself, okay? I've seen it before when there was medical things they wanted scrubbed from TikTok. They did it. So it's not uncommon, but when you see something like that happen just overnight, it's like something is going on. The media is being pulled back. The narrative is changing. It's switching. And we've seen that, right, Bertie? We've talked about that over the last couple of months, that we've seen a massive shift, a logical shift that makes people think, well, maybe he did not do this.
Yeah. Will, from where you're sitting on your phone, can you see the chat by chance?
Very, very, it's really small in the corner.
Okay. Well, I just want to do this. Anybody in the Hive that thinks Bryan is more likely to be innocent, type of 1. Anybody that's convinced he's guilty, type of 2. And Will, check this out. This is pretty remarkable. Well, just give it a second while it catches up.
Well, I kind of felt with like narrative, and it's apparent, it's pretty obvious that that university has a bit of a drug problem going through it. And I kind of felt like the university really didn't want people to know that. And the university didn't want really people thinking that there was a killer or 2 on the loose out there that wasn't caught. And I kind of felt like that they might have been forking out the money, like to Howard Bloom, to write that book. Why would he just write that book like that?
To sell a lot, but to sell a lot of books, though, right? Like, I guess if you wanted the money grab, I could see it. It doesn't make sense. You brought up, like, I've never seen somebody having a book written about. Well, he's about to have 2, and he's about to have an Amazon series, and that's the second Dateline one, I believe. So,
right, and then you have like a victim, or one of the victims' fathers, that totally like went off the deep end in this narrative, to a point that a lot of the stuff that he was coming out and saying was false. I mean, we know already it was false through court hearings, and he still kind of pushes this narrative of being stalked, and I don't get that. And I kind of also think, like the leak, I suspected him of the leak, because immediately when Judge Hitler kind of freaked out a little bit or got upset in that hearing, he immediately lawyered up, and then we didn't hear from that guy at all.
Right.
Like, he disappeared.
Yeah.
Now, Bertie, you asked that question almost 2 minutes ago. We have about 1,200 people in this live chat, and the majority that I've seen come across for the last minute and a half, 2 minutes, has been ones. They believe that he did not do this.
Yeah.
And I get that, there's people out there that they kind of embed in the first information they hear. I mean, it's kind of embedding in things that you hear kind of is a characteristic of not having very much common sense. You know, people aren't smart enough to be open-minded or really seek out the facts themselves. So they like to just take people's words for it. And that's the main thing about media and stuff today. They know that. They know people are getting stupider. You know?
You, Will, you are so right, because I heard Bill Thompson, the prosecutor himself, in court, and I have a clip of it. He specifically says that he was not stalking any of these individuals. And another
Right.
point I want to make real quick. You said, and I could see this about Zana being feisty and fighting back. She would be like somebody of all of them, of the girls, that would probably fight back, especially fight for her man, if you know what I mean.
Her dad had said that
Yeah,
too. Her dad said that apparently there was evidence that she fought for her life.
yeah. I
You know,
could see her
apparently
as
that's what
probably the
occurred.
strongest.
That's kind of
Yeah.
what I think too.
Yeah.
Because you know it's I don't know that it's a shame it happened. I feel bad for those kids. No, you know, I feel bad for you know that just sucks. Any
Yeah.
any any kind of crime against a woman or a child, period. It's just like I don't agree with that. They kind of really I don't like that. I'm not really into people that murder women or people that rape women or children. Like that to me is like the worst shit you could ever do.
Now, Will,
Too
I know
many
you said,
people that let back out on the streets too.
Right.
yeah. I know you said that you knew Brian for about 4 or 5 years. Did he ever try to improve himself during the time you knew him?
Well, he did improve himself. You know, he did. He
And
got clean.
what did you witness? He got clean? Didn't he
Lost weight.
got in good shape?
Yeah, I think he got in. I know he was doing a lot of running and shit like that. A lot of physical stuff, but
Did
by himself. You know,
did
it's
he
not
go
like
to rehab during those 4 or 5 years, or was that?
I think he may have. I think he did. Yeah, pretty sure he did. Now you say that. That sounds familiar. I did not. I just the stubborn Marine in me just kind of had enough. You got to kind of get to a point that no one can make you want to get better. You got to get to a point that you just don't want to do it no more.
Hey,
You don't want, and you
eh,
got to self-discipline.
Yeah.
I totally I can see like maybe not being totally in tune to like if somebody else is going to be going to rehab during that time of your life. And I'm going to ask a question that a lot of people have speculated on. Could you ever see Brian with his PhD studies, or knowing he was about to be a PhD and you knew he studied criminology? Could you ever see Brian being a Fed?
No,
No.
no, no.
Maybe an informant?
The only way he would be, I would say, is the same way anyone else would be, is if they were into what we were into and they got caught, and maybe they got caught with a large amount that they were looking at distribution charges, which can then turn into a lot of time. It's not like I think it's a little worse of a punishment out that way than it is here in the Commonwealth. I
Yeah.
think out in Idaho and out west that you can look
Oh,
at
yeah.
serious time for that more than you can here in Pennsylvania. If he got caught and was, forced to kind of play ball, well, we won't, you play ball, then that's always a possibility.
As a former Idahoan and seeing that happen, you are right on the money. 100% spot on.
They got a way of fucking, and the bad part about that is they get a lot of people killed doing that.
Yeah.
Well,
and they don't give a shit. They don't give a shit about addicts. To them, they're expendable.
and you had brought up the DoorDash driver. it certainly seems like they may be, or she may be a protected individual, and maybe some people that she runs with being a protected individual. I've always wondered myself, in Phoenix, I know you have too, a lot of people in the Hive have, is that like, was there parallel investigations going on where let's say, and I'm not saying Brian's a Fed in this situation, but I'm saying, let's say there's a federal investigation going on for the drugs coming through their Greek life, and this goes sideways. I wonder if they would ever come out in the media and admit, hey, we knew that there was a big problem here. We were running an investigation. This happened right underneath. They wouldn't. You don't think so?
The government would never do that.
They know the feds. They would never admit to a mistake like that.
That's what I mean.
No way.
And why do you think this did not become a federal investigation?
That I never really was quite sure about that. I mean, it was for individuals, and that kind of made me feel like maybe that was something that they would step into, but they didn't. I guess, and some people don't like the creator, but I kind of like him. I think he's good. Jay Embry, I like him. I think he does a good job of going through court documents and looking up things and actually attention to detail. And I remember the one. I think it might have, I can't remember if it was Zana's parents, but the white car that was sitting out there with the two gentlemen in front of their house for the longest time, sitting in it, that he had on the camera there, he was able to pull up.
The marshals.
Yeah, I found that to be really odd, and I don't know. I kind of feel like maybe the feds might have got these kids killed, and not on purpose, but they got these, that they may be responsible for it, even though that they didn't intend for it to happen. I kind of feel that way.
That's a great assessment.
It is a great assessment because, as a lot of people have seen the photos of the quote unquote cowboys on scene, you have to remember, just because a murder case is high profile, that doesn't mean that the marshals get involved. They have their lanes that they stay in. The FBI has their lanes they stay in. The local police, same thing. And it is odd because the straightforward narrative of a lone student who just transferred there, didn't know anybody, was obsessed with serial killers, decided to go and kill 4 kids because he wanted to see what it's like. That would be a very open and shut, straightforward case. It wouldn't be the most sealed and redacted court case that we've seen in recent history with references to national security on it.
Yeah, and everything being sealed.
Yeah, I know. I don't quite understand why everything constantly is sealed, and people seem to want to point the finger at Ann Taylor over delays and whatnot. But we've seen this repetitive thing of her asking for the evidence. Her asking for everything, and them not giving it to her. But then when they do decide to give it to her, they give it to her in amounts that are so overwhelming, with everything that she's looking for buried, for her not to find it.
Correct.
I don't quite understand that. And then if they were so sure in their case, and they did everything, that nothing that wasn't, maybe as far as misconduct goes, they wouldn't need to seal it.
Yeah.
That's how I look at it.
Yeah, I look at it. Oops, we slipped up.
And everything that went on up there, with everything that those fuckers did, they didn't seal nothing. They left it all out in the open.
Well,
they didn't care.
No. And I have this shared here because I thought this was pretty interesting. I was showing Phoenix this. I can't even fit more on the screen. These are all people who have been wrongfully convicted, where they would have spent 25 years or more in prison. Now, I think Project Innocence, I don't want to get the number wrong. What does it say?
Well, I used to make fun of Kim Kardashian until I found out that she uses her money and resources to help get innocent people free. And that's
I believe she met with President Trump and did that actually with Kanye back in his first term.
Yeah.
Like in the beginning, I believe. I didn't know that either until obviously the media covered that, but it's just one of those things where it's like this kind of seems how wrongful convictions happen, everyone. You got a working timeline, a working PCA, inconsistent eyewitness testimonies coming out way after the fact with way more suspect pasts than Bryan Kohberger has. And now they're just going to be like, well, if we got the wrong guy, like, prove your innocence, which is not how it works. You're innocent until proven guilty. It's the state's job to prove that Bryan did this, and they've done a real shitty job proving that it, without a reasonable doubt, it's him.
I also don't understand. They had so much evidence, I guess, of other samples of DNA under fingernails and whatnot. They had blood in there, shoe prints and whatnot, and they didn't save any of this stuff.
You know what shocks me is that they said there's other male DNA that it's unknown. So obviously these individuals don't have a criminal record. They're not in CODIS. However, they did test under Maddie's fingernails, and Cole Beringberger was inconclusive. Now, how did they get his DNA?
Yeah, well, I didn't understand that either. I don't know if they got it out of his trash can or what the fuck they did. I guess he had his. I guess didn't he have his in some kind of thing that had to do with what he was doing forensics. Didn't he have something in it's a program, a DNA program, CODIS. Wasn't he enrolled in CODIS?
I don't know. Don't quote me on that. But I do know that he was in marketing, and he worked in, I guess he went to go work for some Hispanic food company or restaurant. So he does marketing for a Hispanic Mexican restaurant, right? So when I read that, my question was, they couldn't test other people's DNA if they weren't in CODIS, because that means you didn't commit a crime, you weren't convicted of a crime, you're not in the database. But right. Why couldn't they do some genealogy like they did for Bryan Kohberger, allegedly? Wouldn't you want to know whose DNA that was?
Yeah, wouldn't you want to maybe the people that were around, or start getting them out of trash cans, out of all the neighbors and stuff, and comparing things?
Yeah,
that narrative would have caused a
scandal.
scandal.
Would have done, and if they would have done that, they would have probably been in the same fight, in the same battle they are now, of how they obtained it. They don't really want to come out and say how they did.
Yeah. Well, and I believe
it gets to be kind of confusing. I've most definitely stayed up a few hours at night since this and kind of thought about things and tried to make sense of things, and I can't fully.
Well, that's what keeps me up. How did they get his if he wasn't in CODIS either?
I thought he was enrolled in CODIS because of being what he was doing in college with the forensics.
That would make sense.
I heard that now that you're saying that, Will. I do feel like there was something about that. And don't forget that the judge ruled that, I believe the judge had said they don't have to tell you the mechanisms that they used to get his DNA or how they got to him, which is kind of, again, it's weird. There's a lot of stuff that just seems like a judge ruling that way is odd.
I don't think he's ever tried a criminal case before like this. Isn't he a judge that did like civil cases and whatnot, divorces? Isn't that what he did?
Well, historically, Judge Hippler does mental health court. I've never seen him do a DP case, from what I've found.
Yeah, I don't know why they they got the thing to move, but I don't quite understand why they put someone like him in it. I understand he's a judge, and of course the title makes him qualified, but you would think that someone with a little bit more experience in criminal cases would be the judge in this. But
yeah, Will, I had asked you this before, and I thought you had a really good answer. And what just kind of sparked my memory on it was seeing like the Facebook stuff getting taken down. Like, I do question too, like, is there like a major twist that's coming where, who knows why something had to get taken down? If maybe somebody did stumble upon evidence. We've never seen anything getting taken down really, except for the 4chan stuff. You've had, not recently, more so right in the beginning we did. But I asked you previously, if Bryan did get exonerated, do you feel like what you know about him as a person, would he go on like a revenge tour and defamation lawsuits and things like that?
I couldn't see him doing it, but I knew, like, if I seen him, I'd fucking try to get him to. I'd tell him to. I'd say, look, you know, I would fucking tell him about Tony Bruschi and show him everything, and fucking there's other people, and I'd say, look, this is why you were locked up. Go get him.
Yeah. Do you think
don't
if
ever
Bryan
worry about getting a PhD again? Don't ever worry about doing nothing again. They ruin your life. Might as well get money off it so you don't have to worry about ever trying to get a job.
Do you think if Bryan does get exonerated, you would make an effort to reconnect with him?
It depends. It really depends. If he came back to the area and I saw him, of course I'd talk to him.
Well, let's say that he watches this live, you know, and thinks, man, that's the one person that really stuck up for me, right? That stood up and said, hey, this isn't right. This doesn't make sense. Why are we not getting the full picture? Obviously, until trial. Now, what do you think? I mean, this is all hypothetical, Will. If he does walk away from this, what do you think he would do? Would he go back home?
I assume so. I don't. Yeah.
And
what else is he going to do? Really? I mean,
are you
everybody
planning?
in the world knows him.
Yeah.
Can't go anywhere where he's not known now.
Yeah, and I see these videos of everybody spotting Karen Reed, and they're filming her, and she's like, "Leave me alone now." You know, I'm planning on going to the trial. I lived in Idaho, and you know, I plan on going. I put in my application, and one thing that has bothered me so badly are these GoFundMe's, and I can understand it in some cases for these victims' families, but does his family have the resources to come and stay and attend trial?
With missing work and stuff, I'm not. I mean, they're not like rich people. They're just regular blue collar family. Being able to, like, I know, like, my parents wouldn't be able to just miss work and do that if it was me. And they're just regular. Like, my mom is an RN, and my father works construction for a municipality, a sewer authority in State College, Pennsylvania. I know they wouldn't be able to do it.
I mean, I know a lot of people.
I think people do. I think there is actually a GoFundMe for his family to go do that.
If you find one, can you share that? Because I feel really compassionate to help them get to trial, to be there. If that's something
I thought there was. I heard there was, but I have to look for it. Maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe we should start digging into that. And you know, it's 6 weeks away, but well, a little bit more than 6 weeks. But I think that would be the compassionate thing to do, since many of us do believe he is
you're
in
also
fact
maybe the type it. I mean, and it's kind of hard to maybe approach him about it because they're quiet people. They may be the type that, you know, don't like that. You know, it's just
right.
I can't get a read on that. You know?
Right. And I'm not saying a GoFundMe, you know, I'm going to start going live, and whatever is donated will go 100% to that. So, I mean, there's certain other things that we can do to help this family. If I was in this situation and I know that I was innocent, I would want somebody to be, you know, compassionate to help me and my family. So, I mean, that's something that we can discuss. And a lot of people have asked.
I feel bad for what they're going through.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's just not how they feel. It's just how they know that people are looking at them, you know. And
yeah.
Well, the way the media has treated them is horrible.
You know, I don't like that at all.
Yeah. I mean,
I think there's creators out there that are doing a good job. I mean, obviously you're one of them. I wanted to say, like, probably the one I wasn't sure what your show was until your thing started, your intro, and then I recognized it. Probably the one that I watched the most, which I'll probably watch this one now, but was Harsh Reality. I like him.
Yeah.
I think I like how he's open minded to everything. He's like, show me the proof. You know, you got to convince me that someone's in it, that someone's guilty. You know, yeah, that's what you can't just tell me they're guilty. You got to prove it. You know, a lot of people are forgetting that here. I think he's good. I think the girl Joel's is good too. I think the Murder Metal Mayhem guy, I like him. I think he's good. Jay Embry. And the girl, the Truth and Transparency girl, she seems pretty intelligent. She's pretty good at going through court documents and understanding what she's looking at and being able to find video feed that seems like no one else can really locate. She's good at that.
Her video today is unbelievable. I actually watched that on my lunch break with the DoorDash driver. And
now I didn't always agree with certain things, like her little messages she put up about things like when the family's Facebook thing got taken down, which, you know, that was turning in from what I didn't have nothing to do with that. I was never on it. But that was turning into like a fucking toxic fucking hate group, I heard. And combine that with the shirts that guy was having fucking made and wearing in court. What kind of judge would allow that in a courthouse like that? That was fucking ridiculous. But other than that, she's a very intelligent girl, and I noticed that she knows what the hell she's doing. You know, I don't know. Did she go to law school, or is she just really smart?
I have no idea. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of really, really good like internet sleuths out there that I think are like truth seekers.
She has a lot of attention to detail in what she does. And I can tell she's got some OCD issues like I have. You know, she's good. I like her.
Yeah. And I think in general, a lot of the people in this hive, this is the case we've been talking about. But I think that in general, like we don't really trust the mainstream narrative with almost anything. And it's that truth-seeking interest that we've had, probably not, maybe some people, this is their red pill. I think a lot of people got it during COVID, but I think even before then, you know, depending on your age, there's certain events that you can go back and most people will be like, maybe it was 9/11. Maybe it was, Gulf of Tonkin. Maybe it was the JFK. Who knows what's the one where they heard something and they kind of quote unquote woke up.
The upsetting thing about 9/11, and there's a lot of conspiracy people out there that say that, you know, that we were responsible. But the truth of that is the CIA and the FBI both had different information. And if they would have just worked together and came together, they would have prevented it from happening. But each agency wanted to be the hero that outdid the other one. And that's why 9/11 didn't get prevented. But the big thing recently was COVID should have told everyone what the mainstream media is all about. You know, the lies and the fucking gaslighting and the fucking pushing narratives that just are false. You know, ringing people up as we're dying of like a heart attack or old age and ringing it up as COVID. You know, like shit like that. The dead bodies everywhere. I didn't see one fucking dead body.
Well, that's the way I look at this case. You know, I look at this case and I think, man, there's 5 victims here. You know, not only the 4 that were residing at the 1122 King Road, but also Bryan Kohberger, if he's being pigeonholed into this role in this narrative, he is the 5th victim.
Yeah, I've said that before, and his family. This is like ruining people. You know, this is where you interfere with someone's lives, people's lives, to a point that you ruin them, and it goes like well beyond their grave, even their name. You know.
Yeah.
Long after people are going to be talking about him, even long after he's dead. You know, because of this.
I've said that if he does get exonerated, I think, or like maybe not even exonerated, but I think like his appellate courts could have like constitutional changes made because of it. If then when he goes to the appellate, it's proved in one way or the other. But
well, here's the sad part.
The prosecution isn't going to be able to get through this case without there being grounds for appeals in several areas. Right. That's obvious to me right off the bat.
But
Yeah.
that's even sad that our justice system will have to go that route in all these appeals, when I believe that Ann Taylor is really doing her best to preempt that. She's
I
trying to
feel
get
she
all this
is.
information out there to not have to go to the conviction and the appeals if they do have some type of exculpatory evidence that can free him.
Well, I'm thinking one or at least, if not both of those girls, one of them knows what happened, that were in that
Yeah,
house that were left alive.
I was just about to ask you what you thought about the
And
two
I guess he's been trying to
survivors.
subpoena the one girl, and she's been fighting it. She don't want to come back up. She don't want to, for whatever reason. I don't quite get that. But Ann Taylor, I also feel like she took that other case because I feel like maybe that might have ties into this case.
Yeah.
That there's information that she wants to use. And of course,
Are you
people are saying,
talking about the case with Xana's mom?
is that the one?
Yeah, that
And
was the one
Taylor,
whose mother
yeah.
she was defending, and then she switched to defending the suspected murder of her daughter. Yeah,
That's wild.
that
I
is
remember
wild.
Greg Pickler was giving her a rough time about taking on that second case. You remember that, right? In that one hearing.
I
I was
wonder.
under the impression that she took that second case because it tied into this, and there was
And it's
information
possible.
that she wanted to know.
Maybe she knew that Bryan was innocent and this is her way, because she's not working, I understand, allegedly for the prosecution anymore. She is now in her own private practice. Isn't that correct?
That is correct. And I do
Yeah.
wonder too if some strategy ties into attorney-client privilege that she had prior to taking Bryan's defense.
And so that means that she is taking this case pro bono, right?
Yeah, she was
essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah. So all this time that she's defending him, taking this, and we just saw what happened in the Karen Reed, right? It wasn't because of the money, it was for justice.
Ann Taylor's still getting salary as a public defender, though, I believe, isn't she not?
Oh, I have no idea.
As far as I know.
And if she's not getting paid at all, then she must believe he is innocent.
I think she does. I kind of gather that. You watch her. It's like she truly feels. Of course, she's spent time around him personally now. Enough that, think of the hours she's been around him now. But out this before, probably nights before she up in the jail at the fucking room they call him to meet with her prior before hearings following day. She knows what he's like.
But if she is getting paid, it's public knowledge. I'm gonna go down that rabbit hole. I'm gonna find out because it is public.
People said 375.
Yeah, I know it's 375, 335.
It doesn't pay being a public defender doesn't quite pay as good when you have clients come in.
But this is a lot of work. I mean, we're seeing in the repository.
Well, she has another lawyer that helps her, that other woman. Kind of pretty looking, dark haired woman. I can remember she's still on the case. That woman.
Yeah, she's at every case, and you know that she also does federal law. She is in the federal courts. So
I remember her speaking in the beginning of this, whenever they took the case for Bryan, that she was adamant that he was innocent. That woman was. I remember listening to her say that.
Yeah.
If it wasn't pro bono, does anybody in the Hive have an accurate guess? I don't know if that Southern Blonde lawyer's in here. What would a case like this cost? Is that why most lawyers do take it pro bono? Because it's almost an unbelievable
in a case like this, it depends on the lawyer.
Yeah.
You get someone like Alan Jackson or Michael Lessie, this amount of time, it's a lot of fucking money.
But it also, sorry, I got a little delay. It's also based on, can this case set precedents? So when you go to court and you hear all these other cases being mentioned in a court filing, or the attorney is saying in the case of yada 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 and so, that case can set precedents. This case can set future precedents in regards to, I would just guess, DNA. I would guess FBI tips, IG, all these other precedents that they're making sure. And I think, honestly, at the last hearing, Judge Hippler finally said, I'm going to take this under advisement and I'll get a short order back to you about delaying the trial, because that means he'll go back. He'll talk to other sitting judges. He'll talk to retired judges, and he will say, are there any holes in here that you guys see that's coming back and, getting an appeal and winning an appeal? A judge never wants to have an overruling of his ruling. Okay. Especially in his peers. So I think there's a lot of stopgaps being in place now to make sure that there's no errors, no room for error, so that, obviously they can bring this alternative perpetrators forward and hold those that we believe that there's somebody else accountable for this. I think this case will set some type of precedence.
I think it absolutely will.
I was also I kind of am surprised a lawyer trying to make a name for themselves didn't come up and take the case along with their pro bono. Kind of thought that, one would have done that, as big as this is. But
well, wouldn't it be nice if more lawyers stepped up and wanted to be on the case now? Maybe they were busy doing other trials or whatever, and they step up and say, let us know how we can help. Wouldn't that be awesome?
I wonder what Karen Reed's lawyer's office, whoever the secretary is, handles emails. How many attorneys probably emailed and were willing to help for free on that case compared to this one? Yeah. Because that, again, we talked about the dichotomy between the Karen Reed case and the Bryan Kohberger case as far as just the media goes, right? Like potential LE misconduct, as we obviously now know. But the media and the narrative, we've even said, if the two surviving roommates were men, I would bet a lot of money they would have been detained. I just
they'd be locked up.
Yeah.
I agree.
So the news obviously has a ton of power. And Will, if you got any closing thoughts here, man, I just want to say thank you again for taking the time to come onto the stream and for standing up for Bryan, for somebody that you personally know, compared to people that just want to come up here and assume and believe everything they say. I think it takes a lot of guts. And if you got any closing comments, feel free. You got the floor.
I just want people to realize that, if they knew him, he's not capable of that. It didn't happen. People need to keep an open mind about all this and just go back and use a little bit of common sense of the kind of individual it would take to even do this in the first place by themselves, if that's even possible. So that's all I got to say. I appreciate you having me on, dude.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
And to everybody in the Hive that tuned in this evening, thank you. Will, I don't know, again, your chat, you said the chat was pretty small on your phone.
Thank you. Appreciate everyone that watched too. Thank you.
Yeah, you've been getting a lot of compliments and, just a lot of thank yous. And it's probably not easy to be the only person standing up for Bryan Kohberger that knew him. So this chat,
like I said, I can only do it to an extent, what I know.
Right.
And how I view things, personal experience.
Well, I would say that you were a great friend to stand up for him, because he is in a hot seat in a really tough situation.
Yeah. And,
he's innocent. And I'm hoping that, I know if it was me, just the thought, knowing I'm innocent that would be enough for me almost, but it's hard to tell. We just got to hope that it depends on what kind of misconduct goes on with prosecution, how far they take things. One thing they are doing, pushing this fucking thing with the media. They're trying to get people made up before the trial even starts.
Well, my hope and my wish in the next maybe 2 weeks is that the prosecution or something comes up and just, like we've been talking about it, Bertie, that it just falls out of the sky. And then obviously the other DNA is tested. This third party coming in to do another investigation, a higher review of the investigation, of the evidence, will drop a bombshell and just shock the nation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I kind of lost all.
Don't lose hope.
I did faith in the FBI because, I mean, I thought Kash Patel was going to do a good job. But then after they came out and said they weren't going to share the people who were guilty on this Epstein list that they went on about, the Epstein list, they went on and on about with us and teased us about. And then he said, well, we're not going to bring it out because you don't want to put the victims through that. Well, you block the victims out, you know, so so they're not going to make any arrests there or whatever. So I kind of lost faith in that.
I think the victim said that's okay. We don't care if you put us out there. I think like 2 have come forward and said something about that. I know he was on Rogan saying that they're going to release footage of the jail cell. And so it is interesting. I do think that the promise of it was going to be much quicker than what it's been.
Right. Yeah, but it's
I don't even care if he killed himself or not. What I care about is the people that did the crimes over there that they know about. You know, they pay for it.
Yeah.
No matter who they are.
And I think it's
there
like
needs to be transparency.
Yes, I agree, Will. And it's people like me and Bertie and you and others that stand up and hold their feet to the fire saying, do the right thing.
Yep. Well said, Phoenix. And with that being said, Will, obviously we have each other's contact information. If you got anything you want to follow up on off stream, obviously you're more than welcome to. And with that being said, Hive, just a couple quick housekeeping things. A lot of people said the Discord link was expired in my YouTube channel. I fixed that. So now if you guys want to continue over on Discord, that link is fixed. I go live every weeknight at 7 p.m. Central. And I just want to give, again, a special thanks to Will and to everybody who tuned in this evening into the Hive Mind. And I hope everybody has a great rest of their night. And I will see you all tomorrow. Thank you, Will, and thank you, Phoenix. Cheers, everyone.
Have a good night.
Yep, have a good night.
Good night.
Birds flying high, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life.